What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video, and in today's video we are going to go over the Congo's most famous cryptid, possibly the last living dinosaur, or at least one of the last living dinosaurs, the Mokele-mbembe. And before we get into that, guys, real quick, just like to say, if you guys could hit that subscribe button, it would be much appreciated. Also, I'm trying to hit 3,000 watch hours, so if you guys can help me out reach that goal, it would also be greatly appreciated. In several Bantu mythologies, Mokele-mbembe is a mythical water-dwelling entity that is believed to exist in the Congo River Basin. It is variously described as a reptilian creature, a spirit, or a member of the extinct lineage of sauropods. In the early to mid 20th century, the entity would become a point of focus among adherents of cryptozoology and young Earth creationism, resulting in numerous expeditions led by cryptozoologists and/or funded by young Earth creationists and other groups with the objective to find evidence that invalidates or contradicts the scientific consensus regarding evolution. Paleontologist Donald Prothero remarks that the quest for Mokele-mbembe is part of the effort by creationists to overthrow the theory of evolution and teaching of science by any means possible. Additionally, Prothero noted that the only people looking for Mokele-mbembe are creationist ministers, not wildlife biologists. Most mainstream experts believe that Mokele-mbembe, as reported by Congolese natives, was probably inspired by the black rhinoceros, which once thrived in the region. Historian Edward Guimont also argued that the Mokele-mbembe myth grows out of earlier pseudo-historical claims about Great Zimbabwe, and in turn influenced the later reptilian conspiracy theory. And that's kind of a fun one about Mokele-mbembe. Like, at this point, so many people have went down there showing these people pictures of dinosaurs. You just kind of have to question, oh hey, if these people are asking about this, then that means that this is what Mokele-mbembe is. So you kind of has to question like how much interference actually went into this particular cryptid. So the history, 20th century. The first report of Mokele-mbembe comes from German Captain Ludwig Freiherr von Stein zu Lausnitz, as described by Willy Ley in the book The Lungfish and the Unicorn. Von Stein was ordered to conduct a survey of German colonies in what is now Cameroon. In 1913, he heard stories of an enormous reptile called Mokele-mbembe, alleged to live in the jungles, and include a description in his official report. According to Ley, von Stein worded his report with utmost caution, knowing it might be seen as unbelievable. Nonetheless, von Stein thought the tales were credible. Trusted native guides had related the tales to him, and the stories were related to him by independent sources, yet featured many of the same details. Though von Stein's report was neither formally published, Ley quoted von Stein as writing, "The animal is said to be of brownish-gray color with a smooth skin. Its size is approximately that of an elephant, at least that of a hippopotamus. It is said to have a long and very flexible neck and only one tooth, but a very long one. Some say it is a horn. A few spoke about a long, muscular tail like that of an alligator. Canoes coming near it are said to be doomed. The animal is said to attack the vessels at once and to kill the crews, but without eating the bodies. The creature is said to live in the caves that have been washed out by the river in the clay of its shores at sharp bends. It is said to climb the shores even at daytime in search of food. Its diet is said to be entirely vegetable. These features disagrees with a possible explanation as a myth. The preferred plant was shown to me. It is a kind of liana with large white blossoms, with a milky soap and apple-like fruits at the Sosombo River. I was shown a path said to have been made by this animal in order to get at its food. The path was fresh and there were plants of the described type nearby. But since there were too many tracks of elephants, hippos, and other large mammals, it was impossible to make out a particular spoor with any amount of certainty." I'm not gonna lie, reading that, aside from the long tail and long neck, he basically just described a hippo. Because hippos attack canoes all the time and they're entirely vegetarian. Well, they thought they were vegetarian, now they're actually omnivorous, but this is pretty much describes a hippo. And if you ever see like hippos, they use the same paths to go up the banks, and they actually wear paths into the bank that are their size. So he kind of to me just described a hippo with some exaggerations. However, according to Brian Dunig, in a 1929 German book by science author William Bolsche called Dragons, Legends, and Science, Bolsche wrote that von Stein clearly believed that the creature described was not an actual animal, but instead was nothing more than local folklore. According to German adventurer Lieutenant Paul Gratz, account from 1911, the crocodile is found only in very isolated specimens in Lake Bangweulu, except in the mouths of the large rivers at the north. In the swamp lives the Nisanga, much feared by natives, a degenerate saurian, which one might well confuse with a crocodile were it not that its skin has no scales and its toes are armed with claws. I did not succeed in shooting a Nisanga, but on the island of Maboala, I came by some strips of its skin. And that's admittingly kind of interesting, but I wonder if it was just like snake skin or like some other, like maybe like an elephant or a hippo skin that they had like stretched out and tanned. That would kind of make more sense to me. Tales of the entities of Mokele-mbembe, living saurians, are largely significantly unidentified creatures walk around in the African rainforest are not rare. There have been multiple tales of large smooth-skinned quadrupeds with long necks that fed on large prey still living in Central Africa. It was only after the description of the Mokele-mbembe surfaced that the rest of the world started interpreting those legends as possessing a dinosaur-like body structure. A notable example would be the Emela Ntoka, an elephant-sized creature that shares a lot of similarities with the Mokele-mbembe. It is described as having smooth skin, a strong and muscular tail, and a horn or tooth. Another similar creature in the Jago Nini was described by Alfred Aloysius Smith, who had worked for a British trading company in what is now Gabon in the late 19th century, who briefly mentions it in his 1927 memoir. Reports of entities described to be dinosaur-like in Africa caused a minor sensation in the mass media, and newspapers in Europe and North America carried many articles on the subjects in the early 1910s. Some took their reports at face value, while others were more skeptical. It is notable that Western Europeans and the Americans were going through a pop culture interest in dinosaurs, of which the Brontosaurus was one of the most popular. The cultural trend could have contributed to both the reports as well as the tendency for newspapers to claim the report's best was a sauropod. Several expeditions of varying scientific credibility were undertaken in the 20th century to search for Mokele-mbembe, or interview claimed eyewitnesses in 1980 and again in 1981. Explorer Henry Powell and biologist Roy Meckel visited the Congo region and interviewed the native residents. They did not find any direct physical evidence, but nonetheless argued consistent statements from claimed eyewitnesses tend to support the creature's existence. McCall published a book in 1987 detailing his expeditions. McCall admits his investigations were tinged with some romanticism, but also instead he had serious scientific intent. Prothero argues the Powell-McCall expedition almost single-handedly popularized the modern concept of Mokele-mbembe to Westerners, yet was seriously flawed. McCall's training was in virology, which arguably did not qualify him to search for a large exotic creature, and McCall seemed to uncritically accept eyewitness statements without considering the possibility people might lie or exaggerate for financial gain, for attention, or to impress an American visitor. Furthermore, McCall was dismissive of Africans who denied knowledge of Mokele-mbembe, or who asserted the creature did not exist. Zoologist Marcelin Agnagna said he took a film of Mokele-mbembe in 1983, but the footage did not develop properly. Prothero describes the story as suspicious, not noting critical details of Agnagna's account have changed and none of it was supported by other witnesses. Scottish explorer William Billy Gibbons led two expeditions in 1985 and 1992, though Prothero questioned his motives as a creationist and describes Gibbons as not following even basic scientific principle. Journalist Rory Nougat's book, Drums Along the Congo on the Trail of Mokele-mbembe, The Last Living Dinosaur, was published in 1993 by Hugh Mufflin. Nougat's book included a photograph he claimed was possibly Mokele-mbembe, but which Prothero argues was most likely a floating log. Ironically here, it seems like the original person to hear about this was probably the most scientific of all of it, which is kind of interesting when you really think about it. Also, the fact that it kind of came to light, especially in the Americas and in Europe, right in the middle of what is considered a dinosaur boom, basically, where the public took all of this interest in it, and then you blew all that up by newspapers because anything with dinosaurs was making headlines, and hey, look, here's potentially a last living dinosaur. it kind of makes sense. But then, like you said, with the creationalists and all this kind of stuff, this whole story has just gotten so muddled by people who just want this thing to exist. But now we're into the 21st century. In 2001, BBC's Congo, a television documentary series on the natural history of the region, included an interview with the Bayaka people, who identified the Mokele-mbembe as a rhinoceros. While looking at an illustrated manual of wildlife, however, neither species of African rhinoceros is common in the Congo Basin, so the Mokele-mbembe may be a mixture of mythology and folk memory from a time when the rhinoceroses were found in the area. In 2016, a travel documentary crew from South Africa made a documentary about searching for the Mokele-mbembe. The team spent roughly 4 weeks in the Lakuola swamp region, visiting various Aka villages, and then I guess Aka is pygmy villages, collecting stories of the creature's existence. They pointed out the difficulty in differentiating between a Mokele-mbembe's metaphysical and physical existence. While they interviewed people who believed in its presence, others stated it died at least a decade ago. In 2018, Lesgrieve of Knuthenborg, Adam Christopher Knuth, along with a film crew from Danish radio, and a DNA scientist traveled to Lake Tili in the Congo in search of the Mokele-mbembe. They did not find the cryptid, however, they found a new species of green algae. So I guess it wasn't a total wasted trip. But I really want to kind of jump back. They said it was hard to interpret between the Mokele-mbembe's physical existence and people that thought it was real versus its metaphysical, which basically like its mythological status within those communities. And sometimes those things can get jumbled. A lot of people think that's what Bigfoot is. It's like a manifestation or a combination of these beliefs that these people believed are actually real, but the creature itself may or may not have been. Also, they said it might have died like a decade ago, thus implying that, you know, maybe there weren't that many of them and it was a real creature and they're all just dead, and maybe it was actually a mammal as opposed to a reptile, and we'll never actually know what it was because nobody could find it. Maybe it was some different type of hippo with like a longer neck, or maybe like a rhino that we had never seen before, or maybe just these people had words for these animals that weren't supposed to be here, or that Westerners didn't think were there, but there were actually kind of like a remnant population of them there, and now that population is just gone. It's really hard to say when it comes to a lot of these things. But before I get into all this, the next bit of this is theories, and as usual, I'm going to kind of put mine out. I think personally it's a kind of an amalgamation of 3 different creatures. I think it's an amalgamation of hippos, elephants, and crocodiles, personally. I don't really think about the rhinos. I mean, sometimes it has a horn, and maybe those particular cases it is getting confused with rhinos. But when you see elephants in the water, right, all you can see is their trunk, which would give you the implication of like the long head. Then you combine that with like crocodiles swimming near them, and then that's where you can get the tail. And then you take that into account that hippos routinely will flip over canoes and attack people, and they have, you know, tusk, and elephants have tusk. So personally, I think it's just like an amalgamation of those 3 creatures, and now that's just gotten blown completely out of proportion by people just looking for this thing and hoping that it's real. But to play devil's advocate here, if there is a lost population of a dinosaur in the jungles of the Congo, or possibly a large mammal that we don't know exists, I would be all down for that too. That would be amazing, but I feel like we would have figured that out by now. So the lack of physical evidence and the conflicting witnesses have made the existence of the entity dubbed by the large majority of scientists and historians the most reasonable and agreed upon explanation is that the Mokele-mbembe is a legend based on the black rhinoceros, a species once common to Central Africa, where the stories of the Mokele-mbembe originated. According to skeptic Ben Radford, the origin of the creature can be traced back to a 1909 book by zoologist Carl Hagenbeck called Beasts and Men, based on recently discovered dinosaur bones. Hagenbeck speculated that sauropods may still live in Africa, although he offered no evidence other than legends. The claims were circulated by the press, including the Washington Post. Daniel Loxton and Donald Prothero claimed it launched what would become the modern cryptozoological legend of Mokele-mbembe. They concluded that the reports of the monster were not results of hard evidence or genuine first-hand accounts of natives' encounters with the creature, but rather a distillion of many creative leave varied stories from wildly separated regions. The absence of evidence supporting the creature's existence, despite several centuries of Western contact with the region, numerous expeditions in search of the animal, and periodic aerial and satellite surveillance, all of which have detected elephants and other large animals, but no sauropods, all serve to argue against the existence of the Mokele-mbembe. Basically, we've looked for it forever and we haven't found it, so the odds are good that it just doesn't exist. Or doesn't exist anymore, because we didn't have that type of surveying technology forever, you know. But hey, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Do you guys think Mokele-mbembe is real? Do you think it's still alive? Do you think it was alive? What are your theories on what it could be? Do you just kind of agree with the scientists in the wiki? Leave all that in the comment section down below. And while you guys are down there, please remember to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, turn on that notification bell so you never miss another video from me, and I will see you guys in the next video.